welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news on church stories. I am Oni Opala. Let's begin. In a chilling expose of the colonial military's atrocity, a harrowing tale of terror and brutality has emerged, leaving a trail of devastation and despair in its wake. A pregnant woman, innocent and defenseless, was subjected to a vicious beating and detention after an explosive device damaged a military truck near her home. Her cries of innocence fell on deaf ears as she was mercilessly abused and maltreated. But her story is just the tip of the iceberg. Reports are flooding in of the colonial military forces wreaking havoc on entire communities, rounding up innocent civilians and holding them in squalid conditions without food, water, or basic human rights. Livestock is being shot or stolen, leaving families on the brink of starvation. The colonial military's reign of terror has unleashed a wave of fear and suffering, leaving countless lives shattered and broken. Women and children have borne the brunt of this brutality, facing unimaginable horrors at the hands of the colonial military. Many have been forced to flee their homes, seeking refuge in overcrowded and unsanitary camps. Others have been trapped in their villages, subjected to relentless bombing and shelling. Pregnant women, like the one brutally beaten and detained, are particularly vulnerable. Many have been forced to give birth in squalid conditions without access to medical care of basic necessities. Children, too, have been traumatized, witnessing unspeakable atrocities and losing loved ones in the war. The stories of survival are heart-wrenching. Women have been forced to watch as their husbands and sons are taken away, never to be seen again. Children have been orphaned, left to fend for themselves in a war-torn landscape. The trauma and psychological scares will linger for generations to come. The world cannot turn a blind eye to these atrocities. The colonial military reign of terror must be brought to an end, and those responsible for these heinous crimes must be held accountable. The women and children of these water areas deserve justice, protection, and support. Now, all these and more we'll talk about on tonight's Undaunted. But first, let's get the prime headlines. Tonight on Undaunted, we'll look at some of the local citizens raising alarm against alleged colonial government's attempt to alter Santa historical identity. Also, family seeks solution about a missing young man in Bamenda. Tonight, we take a look at the alarming reports of colonial violence abuses in Ambazonia. Also, Tembu Daniel Ebere, particularly known as 237 Towncryer, is in Law Republic to Cameroon dungeon for decrying bad roads. The US and Ukraine have finalized a framework, while mother of jailed British Egyptian activist may end hunger strike if UK shows progress. Now, let's get the news in full briefings. A paramount ruler of the PN, Fon Kenneth Asobo III, A fundum in the Mazam County, Colonial Mazam County of the Midland Zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, condemns the brutal killing of his subjects by La Republic du Cameroon Colonial Army. In a written note to that effect, he urged his subjects to unite and secure safety and hope for the future. His address to the local population came after the Colonial Army brutality killed 6 armless civilians on the 23rd of February 2025. The fawn, in anger, said in his words, "With a heavy heart, I address you again in the wake of the senseless killings of our beloved youth, 6 of whom were tragically lost just last Sunday night." The Colonial Army local witnesses say they opened fire on a drinking spot in Manben where locals were having a sip on Sunday night, killing 6 people, including a mentally unstable individuals. Others sustained life-threatening injuries. Many youths in the village were whisked away by the Colonial Army. These innocent lives were taken for far too soon, and the grief that they share as a people is immeasurable. This is also part of the word as fund statement. He extended heartfelt condolences to the affected family. Now, following the tragic incident, the fund has convened the clan's traditional council to explore avenues for peace and justice. The fund emphasized that it was imperative that the people come together now more than ever to ensure the future of their children is one of safety and hope. He encouraged them to remain steadfast in the face of his loss. He opted for peace, dialogue, and understanding to break free from the circle of suffering. Benin is facing significant challenges as one of the hardest hit communities in the 8-year-long war in Ambazonia. In 2018, the Colonial Army massacred close to 30 people. No independent investigation was made to hold the colonial perpetrators accountable. Just like the fund is crying, we also know that when Ambazonians stand on their own and get independence, all of these would be taken care of. All right, so that is why everyone is employed to join the fight to get freedom. That's not all. A boy has been missing. So aside the war, aside the reckless killing, kidnap is going on. People are missing, unaccounted for. While families are seeking answers for the missing youth in PN after a colonial military raid, the family of Chopo Happiness in Bamenda is worried and is searching for their son who went missing over a week ago. This is a very sad incident. The Chopo family is in distress as they search for the young man who vanished recently. Chopo, who just moved to Bamenda from his village, was working as a commercial bike rider when he disappeared. He was last seen on Sunday, February 16, leaving his home in Mile 7 Mankan for work. Since then, his phone has been unreachable, except for a brief moment on Monday, February 24, when it connected before going silent again. Chopo's case is part of a worrying trend of disappearances in Bamenda, which has become more common due to ongoing war in the area. Families often search for answers but receive little help from colonial authorities. Venu, a woman from Kumbu, shared her own story in 2020. Her brother went missing under similar circumstances. Up until now, he hasn't been found. She shared that after a long search, she later on found him in Bamenda Colonial Central Prison. He had been arrested while going to a burial and was accused of being an Ambazonian fighter. She spoke of a struggle to raise over 400 francs CFA to get her innocent brother, who had just come from Boya, released. Meanwhile, the colonial authorities have remained silent, and families who have lost their loved ones without any cause are left without answers. Chopo's family is demanding to know where their son is and if he is doing okay. That is not even all of the abuses. These abuses goes on and on and on, and now we have alarming reports of colonial violence abuses. Now, there are worrying reports from the Mbu area in the local government area of Ambazonia, where civilians are facing harsh treatment from colonial military forces, raising fears of a possible massacre. Recent stories from Mbu shows a troubling situation for local residents. An innocent pregnant woman was reportedly locked up and beaten after an explosive device which damaged a military truck which was found near her home. Despite her claim that she knew nothing about it, she suffered greatly. Reports reaching us has it that many people have been rounded up and kept in small rooms for days without food or water. Livestock like goats and pigs have been shot without with some stolen by the Colonial military bandits for food. Meanwhile, some residents who could pay a ransom have been released, but many others are still in captivity and facing torture. One civilian who escaped said, "They has promised us that what happened in the Ngabo will soon happen there." So you can imagine they plan all of this. While a warning is being issued about the potential case for massacre as reports of ongoing abuse continues to come in. As such, the local community is advised to stay alert as it is uncertain what might happen. And this is the life of Ambazonians every day. That's not all. Historical distortion is another struggle that Ambazonians are going through. Residents of Santa are alarmed by reports from a concerned citizen on the ground, suggesting an effort to change the area's historical identity. It is feared that this violation of existing colonial decrees could lead to unrest. The act has shown widespread condemnation from the community because tensions are escalating in Santa following reports that the Colonial Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanganji, along with certain local elites, are attempting to install a new chief under the name Santa Akom, a village that does not exist within the Santa area. This move has been met with strong condemnation from protesting residents who views it as a blatant attempt to undermine their historical identity. Local sources indicate that this initiative is causing significant concern among residents, many of whom fear it could lead to further discord and violence. A local resident expressed their shock, stating this news has shocked the community as they fear it could alter the history and identity. So the situation is especially sensitive as many in the community remember the tragic events of the 1960s and 70s when countless lives were lost due to similar tensions. If these allegations prove to be true, they would not only violate existing colonial presidential decrees that officially recognizes Santa's status, but also disrespects the community's historical significance. Meanwhile, a community leader emphasized the need for clarity and denounced the action of those involved, stating that this is illegal attempt and in an affront to their identity and the painful memories of their past. He urged the community government to respect their rights and of course their heritage. A very sad story here before we wrap up the news from the home front. Tembu Daniel Ebere, who is popularly known as the 237 Towncryer, is in La Republic, the Cameroon dungeon for decrying bad roads. He was abducted on February 25th in Douala, La Republic, the Cameroon's economic capital. So he's known as a comedian and content creator. His name is Tembu Daniel Ebere, popularly known as 237 Towncryer. He was arrested this Tuesday evening in what his lawyer, Towncryer, qualifies as an abduction. While a brief statement from the human rights lawyer who has defended Towncryer in previous lawsuits and police-related cases says the comedian was abducted in his home in Douala on the 25th of February. In his words, he said he has been informed that his client has been abducted and he feels that it is illegal. He says you cannot arrest someone without a warrant of arrest except in flagrant delictual offenses, not for defamation, he added, without proving further details. Well, Towncryer's statement suggests that 237 Towncryer was taken by the La Republic to Cameroon security forces. While in a second update, coming 3 hours later, Barrister Towncryer said Towncryer was abducted on claims of defamation, but he did not name the accuser. And so in his words, he says he's working on that and he doesn't sleep in police custody. Well, abducting someone for accusations of defamation, Towncryer said, is abusive. He also suggested that the colonial police failed to follow due process and procedure and presented no warrants before carrying out the abduction. Previous reports from human rights organizations and the news media have linked colonial legal security forces to arbitrary abduct and detention of civilians accused of both simple and no act at all. This is the second time this year that the 237 Towncryer are being intruded upon by the Colonial La Republic to Cameroon police. Well, this report says that on the February 2nd, he informed fans on his Facebook that Colonial and police officers are searching his house and intimidating him. Well, 237 Towncryer's trouble with the colonial regime started after he made a video citing an instant and inside a pothole filled with water in the middle of a busy city road. That's all we have for you today from news from the home front. Coming up next after this break is news across Africa and the globe. You're welcome back. Mother of jailed British Britain activist may end hunger strike if UK shows progress. Well, Laila Lusif, the 60-year-old mother of jailed British Egyptian writer Alaa Abdul El Fattah, has signaled that may end her 150-day hunger strike if UK minister demonstrates meaningful progress in securing her son's release from an Egyptian prison. Sayouf, who has been staging daily protests outside Drawing Street, was hospitalized this week after suffering dangerously low blood sugar levels. Doctors have warned of an immediate risk to life, citing her high susceptibility to sudden death if she continues fasting. She remains under medical observation at St. Thomas Hospital in London. Fattah, who is a prominent activist and critic of the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, has been repeatedly jailed. His current 5-year sentence should have ended last September, factoring in 2 years of free sentencing detention under Egyptian law. However, he remains incarcerated, with Egyptian authorities refusing to acknowledge his British citizenship or grant consular access. Efforts by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to engage directly with Sisi have so far been unsuccessful. Despite multiple written appeals and diplomatic interventions, including a UN Human Rights Council, statements condemning Fattah's detention has remained unyielding. A family member expressed frustration over the British government's limited progress, saying that it seemed extraordinary that the UK government's apparatus cannot even secure a call. Yusuf's condition has deteriorated, with blood sugar levels dropping to a critical 2.0 and blood pressure reaching at 75/45. She refuses glucose treatment but is receiving a saline drip due to their low sodium levels. While Starmer met with Fattah's family 2 weeks ago, Downing Street has disclosed little about any concrete steps being taken. But meanwhile, the Foreign Office is reportedly exploring economic incentives to pressure Cairo, recognizing that financial leverage may be the key to unlocking Fattah's release. The UK has a €4 billion trade partnership with Egypt, previously described as tremendous leverage by David Alamy, now the Foreign Secretary. Additionally, last year, the World Bank pledged $6 billion in support for Europe, some of which is expected to involve the British financial backing. Fattah's family remains frustrated by the lack of a coordinated UK policy linking economic agreements with Egypt to human rights improvements. They continue to call for urgent action before Swift's health deteriorates even further. Coming up next is news across the globe. On Tuesday, we reported that Ukraine and the US have finalized a framework agreement on natural resources, with President Trump confirming the deal will grant Ukraine military equipment and the right to fight on. But however, Ukrainian President Zelensky noted that the agreement doesn't include security guarantees as hoped, although they are mentioned in the text. So the agreement includes 2 key provisions secured by Zelensky. Firstly, revenues from extracting and selling minerals resources will fund Ukraine's post-war reconstruction rather than repaying US aid. Secondly, while the agreement doesn't provide direct US security guarantees, it references them. So Ukraine has an abundance of natural resources, including coal, iron, ore, magnesium, and titanium. The country has the world's 7th largest coal reserve. Europe's second largest and the world's sixth largest iron ore reserve. Ukraine is also a significant producer of manganese ore and has the largest titanium reserve in Europe. And so North Korea is deploying thousands of troops to Russia. So this is another development where North Korea has sent approximately 3,000 troops to Russia with plans to deploy up to 10,000 by December. Well, according to U.S. officials, the troops are reportedly undergoing trainings in Russia, far and east port city of Vladivostok. The move has sparked concerns about their escalating conflicts in Ukraine, with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin stating that if the troops are intended to fight alongside Russian forces, it will be a very, very serious issue. And so Russia has been suffering heavy casualties in Ukraine, and the deployment of North Korean troops is seen as a desperate attempt to bolster its military presence. And so, the move has also raised questions about what North Korea might be seeking in return from Russia, with speculation ranging from cash and technology to weapons. Alright, that's all we have for you in tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the major stories. Alright, tonight on Undaunted, we told you that local citizens are raising alarm over Colonial government's attempt to alter Towncryer's historical identity, while families seek solution about a missing young man in Bamenda. We also gave you alarming reports of colonial violence and abuses in Ambazonia, especially as it relates to women and girls. Meanwhile, Tembu Daniel Ebere is probably in locked up La Republic de Cameroon dungeon for decrying bad roads. Tonight, we took a look at the US and Ukraine, how they have finalized a framework. And that's it for tonight's Undaunted. Remember that coming up at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. is, of course, This Week on Undaunted. We have seasoned barristers in the house to give justice to each and every topical issue that we bring to the front burner. Until then, good night and God bless.